Did you know that acrylic painting is one of the most popular mediums in the world right now? I just looked it up, but my question is, how come it's also the most misunderstood? Welcome back. I'm Christine. This is Mike. And I think that there are so many ways that you can use acrylic paint that artists just try one method, and when they don't like it, they never use it again. So today I want to talk to you about all the reasons why I love acrylic paint, and you should too. Acrylics can basically be anything that you want them to be. Here I'm applying them to a canvas using a paper plate. This is me using a fork to create really fun textures. I even get my hands messy with some splash art. And of course, there's my favorite, using acrylic paint with bubbles. Which brings me to my favorite acrylic painting technique of all, the acrylic watercolor technique. The acrylic watercolor technique is exactly how it sounds. It's basically when you build up thin layers of watered down acrylic paint on mixed media paper. So before we dive into the final sketch, I just want to show you that I work everything out in my sketchbook first. I start with a couple of really basic ideas that look bad. Sometimes when I'm sketching, I don't like to deal with the crease in the middle of my book, so that's why this is backwards. My brain is very backwards. But then over here, you can see where I've taken what I've sketched and then I created a bigger piece. And this is where I would figure out colors before I move into the final painting. Instead of doing a normal color wash, I'm starting this piece with an underpainting. The technique that I'm using is called the grisaille technique. Oh my gosh, I hope I said that right. Now, if you've never heard of this before, it basically means painting the entire first layer in shades of gray so that you can map out the lights and the darks before you add any color. This is something that I love to do with acrylics because I'm the type of person that gets lost in the details and I just forget where my light source is. So doing everything in one color just keeps me on track. You also don't have to use gray. You can use something more vibrant if you want more energy and saturation in your final painting. I'm just using gray because I want my painting to look kind of dark and gloomy. If you're into art history like I am, you probably have heard of the grisaille technique, and you probably know that it's traditionally used in oil painting. But this is one of the reasons why I love acrylic so much, because you can borrow techniques from other mediums and make them work for you. And because acrylics dry so fast, building up the layers is a lot easier than it would be with oils. Other mediums are kind of limited with the different techniques and effects you can do with them, but acrylics become whatever you want them to be, depending on how you want to paint and like the specific expectation that you have. It just requires a little bit of experimentation on your part to understand how to get the acrylic paint to do what you want it to do. And that's how I've developed all of the techniques that I love to experiment and play with. I've just done it multiple times that I know what works for me and what I need to do to get the final result that I want. Now that I'm happy with the first layer of paint, I'm going to start bringing in a lot of color to add shape and depth. I'm still keeping everything really light and washy at this stage and just slowly building up the colors that I want. If you try this method for yourself, make sure that you use mixed media or watercolor paper because watered down acrylic paint won't stick to a canvas. It'll just bead right off and it'll be a complete disaster because it's happened to me before. And that's why I strictly work on paper now when I want to use this technique. It took me forever to figure out how to use acrylics on paper, and now this is my favorite way to paint because it feels a lot like working with watercolor or gouache, but you don't have to worry about reactivating anything underneath. And when I'm done building up all of the transparent layers, that's when I can start adding my opaque layers on top. This method just gives me so much freedom. I would consider this the halfway mark of my acrylic painting. I'm just going to look at everything and determine what needs to be fixed before I move on to the final stages. The things that need to be redefined are things like adding more muscles and tone to the front part of this horse. I want to make the neck more muscular and bring it out a bit. I also would like to redefine the shape and fix the hair as well as the snout. So I'm just going to go in with some opaque layers of acrylic paint and redefine and shape these features to make it look more realistic and believable. Because after all, this is a creature that's going to go into my monster universe, and I'm going to tell you more about it in a little bit. I should probably mention that if you're going to paint with thin, transparent layers like this on paper, you have to use a decent brand of paint. You can't just use craft paint because those are already watered down and they don't have a lot of pigment. You would need to use something like Liquitex Heavy Body or Golden Acrylic paint. Personally, I like to use Liquitex Basics because I find that there's enough pigment in there for me to work with. I've done this so many times and I've mixed Liquitex Basics with basically everything. No pun intended. I've mixed it with my bubble concoction, I've mixed it with Floetrol, I've mixed it with water, and I've never had any issues with the paint breaking down or not having enough pigment. And I add a lot of water, like a serious amount of water. So when it comes to acrylics, it's all about finding what works for you. So this might look like trying different tutorials, testing art supplies, and dedicating some time to experiment and play. Acrylics are the only medium that lets you experience it in multiple ways and gives you a new experience each time you sit down to use it. Like every time I pick up acrylics, it feels like a brand new art form, which is why they can be so personal to you. They can adapt to you, and there isn't one right method. There are hundreds. It just depends on how you want to use them. And that's why I feel like acrylics are often misunderstood. Most artists try one technique and then they assume they figured out the whole medium. But believing that there's only one way to paint with acrylics is like believing there's only one way to be creative. There are endless approaches and just a whole bunch of new techniques waiting to be discovered. This is when my art journey really began to shift for me and when I really started to fall in love with acrylic paint. Acrylics have just given me permission to look at painting from a new angle and a new perspective. It's allowed me to break the rules and to get messy and discover a method that works for me. And to my surprise, I've discovered multiple methods, which I am going to continue to share on this channel. And now that I've rambled on about acrylics for a really long time, I want to talk about the Pegasus that I'm painting. This Pegasus lives in my monster universe, a place that I love to escape to when the real world feels heavy. In the current storyline, the Rainbow Bridge is breaking apart because artists everywhere stopped using color, and it needs help. One of my viewers, whose name is Creative Rainbow, which I think is so ironic, wanted to join in and help, but she told me that she doesn't know how to draw. So I wanted to create something for her, but also for anyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong in the creative world, because this video is all about making the mediums that you're using work for you. Even if you're not into acrylic painting, say you're into watercolor or oil paints, I am positive that if the traditional method doesn't work for you, that there is another way to use it that will fit you perfectly. Back to the Pegasus. I didn't just want to make a rainbow creature for Creative Rainbow. I wanted to make something more meaningful. So this Pegasus represents me and maybe you too. It's flying through a storm, but it's also glowing. It's moving. It's searching for pockets of light. And what does the light represent? It represents my audience. It represents my family. It represents my husband, all of the people who support me on my creative journey. It's all of those tiny sparks of creativity that keep me going, even when things feel dark. And the rainbow represents Creative Rainbow and every person who brings color into someone else's life without realizing it. And I can only hope that my videos bring light to any of you who might be going through something or just feel awkward and out of place creatively. There is always a place for you, especially in the art world. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it because art can be extremely traditional and people can be judgmental and be like, oh, it's not high quality or it's mediocre. It doesn't matter. You are doing your part. You're being creative. Everybody's creativity is somebody else's rainbow and light because you never know who's going to see it and who is going to inspire. And that's why we create. But that's also why I love acrylic paint. Because acrylic paint can help you create and be expressive in so many ways. Oh, and the name of the Pegasus is Lemuria. Lemuria is a Pegasus who soars through darkness and summons a rainbow whenever she needs light. What she doesn't realize is that the rainbow she follows actually comes from you. At this point, my painting was basically done, and I took all of the final shots that you're seeing right now. But after staring at it for a little bit, I decided to take my white Prismacolor pencil and add some rays of sunshine shining through. And then I covered up some of those weird snowflake things in the background. And then it was done. If there's one thing that I want you to take away from this video today, it's that acrylic paint isn't just a medium. It's an experience. It's a chance to explore your creativity and find a unique method that works for you. Acrylic painting is freedom, it's expression, and most importantly, it's healing. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm going to let YouTube suggest which video you should watch next, and I'm going to go do some more painting.